The City Planning and Zoning Board will come to order. Today is Thursday, May 15th, and it's at 1:30. Preliminary matters, agenda additions or deletions, Tim, or board
staff
members?
has none, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Could we go for approval of our minutes? And we actually have two, so we'll do them separately as opposed together. So the workshop meeting minutes from March 10th, 2014. Move. We have a motion to accept the minutes. Do we have a second?
So moved.
We have a second. All in favor of accepting the minutes?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? This one's second minutes approval is for the regular meeting dated April 3rd of 2014. Do I have a motion to accept the minutes?
So moved.
Second.
We have a second. All in favor of accepting the meeting minutes from April the 3rd, say aye. Aye. Opposed? No. Public comment. It's a large crowd today, so we will be able to open and close public comment very quickly. And the public hearing now is a legislative matter, and it is an ordinance of the City of Vero Beach, Florida, amending Section 65.04 of the Code of the City of Vero Beach to amend the membership requirements of the Planning and Zoning Board, providing for conflict and severability, providing for codification, and providing for an effective date. Tim, are you going to make a presentation?
Right, I'll do a short presentation on this. This issue has come up under our previous chairman. And I'm sitting here trying to remember his name. Keith. And we're starting off very well.
Okay,
today.
people, let's not pretend like we know this, okay?
You're going to hear retirement?
I tell you.
It's the rain.
This came up when Keith was here dealing with the conflicts with the Florida statutes, but Keith moved on before that was really resolved. So we have a similar situation with Ms. Polinsky on our board, being a landscape architect who does work for various individuals. The issue is in the Florida statutes, it's not only that Ms. Polinsky would have to recuse herself from voting on matters that she's involved with the organization, but she basically would have to terminate all contractual matters with that firm, or in the future with that firm. Basically, in a small town like this, unless she wants to retire and not bring any money in, I think we got some problems. So Peggy and I, we looked at the statutes and identified, and Peggy can probably go in more detail, there is an exception in the Florida statutes that allow where a specific professional position is identified as needed to be on that regulatory board, that would be the exemption from this. She would still have to that person would still have to recuse themselves, and they had to file a quarterly statement, I believe, on that. We identified 4 disciplines that we thought would give some range of that: with landscape architect, engineer, and urban planner for that. Clearly, we think that those kind of disciplines, one of those on this board, would be very beneficial to the board, particularly you do with a lot of land use development issues, knowing how to read site plans and review them and ask questions about that. The downside from the standpoint is that obviously it means one of the positions has to be one of those, and if a person resigns or for whatever reason is not reappointed, that has to be filled by one of those positions. It's more complicated in our situation because, as you well know, in this city, the city council members appoint each individual person individually, of the members. So that's a downside. But we feel that overall, being a small city like this, there's more positive to gain from this type of ordinance than there's not. If we don't pass that ordinance, we feel that we won't be able to attract those kind of people onto the board, because basically you're going to put them out of business, most likely, in the city, unless they're doing international business and they're not involved. So certainly you have some questions, and Peggy can get into more of the legal detail.
Yeah, there are a lot of weeds involved, and I don't know if you all have had anything to do with the ethical statutes, but they are a quagmire, and they're hard to negotiate. And like Tim was saying, when Keith was here, he actually went to the ethics division up at the state, and he got an ethical opinion that didn't go this far. What his opinion did was it allowed him to do the work prior to the matter coming before his board, and then he would have to do what Ms. Polinsky's going to have to do in the near future, which is terminate all relationship with the client, then declare a financial conflict, and then if the client's still interested in hiring her back or him back, then they can hire them back, and it can go over and over and over again. And I think that the legislature realized that in a small community like this could be pretty prohibitive on folks who are professionals working on one of the boards, serving on one of the boards. So they put into place at 1112-317-3137B a waiver, a statutory waiver that reads like this. This subsection, which is 1112-3137A, shall not prohibit a public officer or employee from practicing in a particular profession or occupation when such practice by persons holding such public office or employment is required or permitted by law or ordinance. So that's what this ordinance is, and that's where we had gotten to with Keith just before he left. We're talking about drafting an ordinance so that he wouldn't have problems, and we've done it for other boards. Our Historical Preservation Board requires an architect, right, Tim? And the Architecture Board requires that all 5 regular members and the 2 alternates all be architects. So they're protected under that provision.
No, it doesn't. It's just that, it doesn't require them all to be architects.
There are different qualifications
Yeah.
for that.
Oh, I see. That's right. Architects, engineers, or landscape architects. So it's somewhat similar to what we're trying to do. And we talked to Chris Anderson up at the Department of Ethics saying, can we do like a 4-way split like we're contemplating? Can we have it landscape architect, urban planner? And he said, well, we've never done that before, but I think that's good. So we tried to build in a little bit more leeway and wiggle room than we would have had otherwise with just landscape architect or just urban planner. And that's kind of where we are now. There's pluses and there's a few minuses, but I think the legislature in their wisdom realized that if they didn't give this kind of wiggle room, they could have some real problems keeping professionals on the board. And I know of at least one professional, Dorothy Hudson, who is a fine real estate attorney. Now she's a realtor, but she was on the County Planning and Zoning Board for quite some period of time, and she kept getting conflicted out and losing clients. So finally, she just removed herself from that board, and that was a real shame because she was a good attorney. But if you have any other questions, just for you all to look at, if you like the idea of it, we'll go forward with it. If not, who knows what'll happen.
Mike, Chairman.
Yeah.
Peggy, I'm a little confused here. I think I've been sitting here for 18 years, and this is the first time when somebody had a conflict I've heard they had to, quit their job or dissolve their relationship with a client. I thought they simply declared a conflict and were even allowed to participate, but not to vote.
That's a different conflict. That's a financial voting conflict, and this is under 3137A, and it prohibits a public officer or employee from having an employment or contractual relationship with any business entity subject to the regulation of his or her agency. And the agency is a really important analysis that you have to do. In this case, Ms. Polinsky's and Keith Pallen's would have been their agency. The Planning and Zoning Board is their agency.
Peggy, most likely, were we that aware of these, I think until Keith's situation, because he just brought up the good question. It might have happened in the past, but we were probably ignorant of those conflicts.
I don't think I've ever had a situation here where a professional, like an attorney or I don't know, perhaps it would have come up when, who was that attorney who was on the city council years ago, who went with JAG? You know who I mean. No, that was before I came.
He had to leave because
Jack
Jack Capra.
Capra.
Perhaps he had a legal practice that this could have come up, but I don't remember what his legal practice consisted of. It could have been out of the community. See, it's only within the community that you've got the problem.
I don't know. I guess I just never heard of this before, and it's kind of shocking that these kind of things would be required.
Well, it is.
And,
And I-
and then
I
the
thought-
other thing is, the other aspect of this is that if Robin was, to either to resign or be required to leave or whatever, that would mean that her city council person would have to, their choice would be limited to one of these three or four categories.
That's true.
And I don't know how they're going to feel about their ability to appoint someone as being restricted by this.
And that is one of the downsides, other than we go back and revise the ordinance again.
Well, the
Clearly
city council would have to
have to
wrestle
do
with that
that.
issue.
Well, that'd be all right. I'd rather not be a
What
political
happens
appointee.
if,
But
what if happens if there's no person with professional credentials wants to be on the board? We just keep the board without one of those persons? Is that acceptable?
No, the only way that this ethics provision, this ethics waiver works if it's a mandatory.
Yes, that's right.
Our
So-
code enforcement board has if wherever possible, it'd be nice if you had a real estate person and a businessman, but for this waiver to work, it has to be mandatory.
But
So
this
that's
isn't-
what we're locked into.
This isn't like China, whereas if you need a kidney, you go out on the street and you get some mandatory live organ donor matching or something. If nobody is, are you saying that if nobody volunteers or nobody's willing to serve, the seat sits open and then the alternate takes over, or you can't operate unless you have somebody sitting in that seat?
In my opinion, you couldn't operate. And that's what he's facing too. I mean, it's tough for her to try to find not only a city resident, and the same thing with the Architectural Review Board and the Historical Preservation Board. If she can't find a match to that, with the perfect concentric circle of city resident and planner and urban planner, or
And a council person willing to appoint them.
Well, there's
Well,
another
the,
issue.
the only out is that the nice thing is that an urban planner in this state isn't licensed, so you can go around. Anybody can call themselves a planner.
Right.
I'm telling you,
well,
anybody.
Tim, I don't know if I'd be bragging about that.
And that's a good thing.
But hey.
Well, there's another aspect.
But the other ones are all licensed. So under this state, you could not say I'm a landscape architect or an architect unless you are one licensed.
If the presence of a professional is required, and that professional has a conflict and has to recuse or not participate, then any decision by the board with that person absent is probably illegal.
No,
No.
no.
I'm raising the issue because a good attorney could challenge to say that if the person is supposed to be a member and supposed to be participating in the decision process by law, and your member no longer can participate in that process, then your board has ceased to be legal.
No, I don't.
That member, that
it
member
could be
can
argued. It
still
could be argued.
discuss,
Yeah,
and that member can still give their opinion.
That's right.
The member just may be conflicted out by a financial conflict, which is what Mr. Mucha was raising.
Is that why you're
earlier.
saying that if the seat was empty, the board couldn't operate?
That's right.
Is that where he's going?
If
right.
there
That's
was
what
no
you're
one
saying.
in that, if we didn't have one of the mandatory professions sitting on the board, yeah, we'd have a problem.
Well, I mean, we would
Obviously-
have to look for one. Obviously, the person could be missing a meeting or that. You can still
That's
operate
true.
as a
That's
board.
another-
But we would have to, within some time, right, Peggy, to fill that position.
yeah.
We could not have the permanent position would have to be filled by that.
Right.
And if we were to delay this forever and ever, yeah, I guess somebody could bring a challenge that we were violating.
What does the county do, and what do other cities do?
I've shared this ordinance with Bill DeBrawl, who's the attorney for the county planning department, and apparently they just haven't had this issue come up since Dorothy Hudson was on the board. So they just, I suppose, don't have any members.
That was when?
They have a lot of retired members too, I think.
But you're saying that they have to designate a position, aren't you?
Under this
here.
ordinance.
Yes.
This ordinance isn't required.
This is, this is.
Oh, it's only for the convenience of any professional that might be on the board.
It's to meet the language of the waiver under the ethics rules.
Dick, do you have Dick had a
I have a
comment.
question, two-part. Number one, does the party have to be licensed, actively licensed? Or number two, can he be, by experience, previously licensed and retired?
Well, if they're retired, it doesn't matter. You could do that. We didn't say if they had to be licensed. So clearly a retired person could be on there, but the intent is to that they're doing work, but we did not put that in there. I mean, you
Presumably,
could,
the retired person wouldn't be working, so which kind
but
of
they can't call themselves an engineer unless they're licensed. So they may not be working anymore, but they still be retaining their license. So you could make that argument. There are three of those that have to be recognized in the state. That, you have to be licensed.
Most of the time, for example, my engineering partners, they drop license in certain states and things if we're not working there, and they pick them back up again. So a retired person, unless he pays a fee, is not an engineer.
That's correct.
A licensed engineer.
And that
He may be
wouldn't-
an engineer, but he's not a licensed engineer because that
recertification
costs him a
exam.
lot of money to maintain that. in
And
some
that's
cases.
correct.
It's the same thing in the law.
So again, the ordinance specifies that those three categories be actively licensed?
No, it doesn't. I'm just saying in this state, we did not get into that. We just, in this state, that you have to be licensed to call yourself an architect or an engineer or that. You see what I'm saying? So we didn't go into that. Mainly, as I said, the planner you aren't licensed in the state, so anybody can call themselves a planner.
But wouldn't we still have this same problem as in the Dorothy Hudson case, if we had an attorney on the board and we can't fill this slot with an attorney because that's not one of those 4 items, right?
Well, I mean, we could expand
Under-
Well,
The
may
attorney could be on any other position or for an alternate.
may I clarify?
Yeah.
I think we're discussing,
confused.
we already have an existing ordinance, right?
That's correct.
That requires us to have a professional of some sort.
No.
No.
We do not.
Requires us to have somebody who is an architect, landscape architect.
No.
We do not.
Nothing. We have no ordinance that requires this
No,
board.
you got to
have
be
it.
a city resident
City
and
resident.
alive.
Okay.
And you have to
Okay.
pass the mirror.
So we
under
are
the
now.
nose test.
This is not just to put a severability on there that the conflicts can be dealt with in this way, but it's also to add the requirement that this kind of a person with this kind of a background be a member of the planning board, right?
Right.
Okay.
Right. That's one of the.
It
we
doesn't-
believe one of the benefits.
It doesn't address the issue that Mark raised, which is that each of the city council members has an absolute vote on a membership on here, and I think that's a weakness in the proposed.
And
Oh,
we
yeah,
we
absolutely.
totally
And
agree with you.
all right, now how do our alternates get appointed
By the entire council.
by the entire at large? Okay,
Council as a whole for 4
council as a whole. It would seem to me that it would make sense that an individual you increase the member by by 1 to 6, and you make the professional required an at-large vote by the city council. Would be a way of dealing with that.
It's odd number, even number of votes could be three ties.
No problem. These three ties, you just don't have you're not making a decision.
Pardon?
May I
Well,
add in here?
We had
No,
none.
what he's saying is increase the membership by 1 to 6, and that one member would be at large,
I
appointed
see.
by all the. That gets around that, but there is that.
But it creates
time-
the even.
Other than the council went through out of its way to get down to 5.
Yeah,
So,
we
I mean,
actually have an
that's-
ordinance in place that mandates that it be
The 5. I
except
mean, this
for
is-
the code enforcement board.
Except for the code enforcement board, which
Right.
is 7 because the
Statutorily is
statutes
7.
require that.
Statutory. So we basically settled on 5, so
I'm
that
just saying-
we have each one of the council members has an equal say, no matter what their political affiliation or interest might be, and it gives everybody an equal say in all of the boards and commissions. That I understand, but here you're making a change by saying, if the right now each council member has a seat here, and one of those seats is now filled by a person who's required to be here or represents.
No.
If we
So that
pass-
council member will always be, unless one of the other council members happens to appoint somebody, then
Who's also in
then,
one of those
then you'd have another option. So it does create an issue, which I'm not sure how the city council should be aware of that.
Oh, they will. It's in our memo, and we plan to
Okay.
discuss it just like we are here.
So they will be discussing whether or not a council member wants to be restricted to their appointment to a board for
Yeah,
a
and
person
that's-
that meets certain criteria.
Yeah.
For more than just city resident.
What if you have 2 of these people?
You can do
Well,
that.
that's easier.
Well, you could have 2, but am I wrong? One has to be the official designee, right? Didn't we talk?
You could have 2
Hard to
slots.
Oh, yeah, but then you got 2 slots.
Then you got more problems.
If you had,
But
no. If you had 2 people, all right, that's another question.
Okay, go ahead.
If you have 2 people on the board that qualify as professionals in the
Right.
field, right? Wouldn't they both be given the waiver?
Only
Or
if
not?
only if
No,
your
if they're
ordinance
required to be.
required those
Only if the
two.
ordinance requires.
I mean, the
2.
only
So which one would be the one covered?
well, that person would be designated.
That has to be designated.
Designated.
Designated by
so
the
the only
city
good
council.
the only good thing about that, one of them, if one leaves, you already met the other one can then be designated for that, and
Well, you can change the designation.
yeah. But
Right.
you're right. There's
I'd like to make a comment, and my comment is that we're in a small hole right now with this problem we have. It looks like we're trying to dig a bigger hole for ourselves with more problems. Okay? And I think that we'll address the problems when they arise for the
Okay.
individual
Fine.
and try to work through, as opposed to creating an overlay that's or an ordinance adjustment here, whatever you want to call this, an ordinance that could give us all kinds of new possibilities and problems.
It's a city council issue at this point, I think.
well,
May I make a comment, please?
yeah.
I have a lot of difficulty with this because what we're doing is we're creating a dependency on the board for someone to be here for us to consider a consultant on any particular issue. I really would rather see that kind of expertise coming from the planning department. And I know that it's very, very difficult right now as far as budgeting is concerned, and I think that council needs to look very seriously and see how that budgeting is allocated. Where we would change the whole scope of what we're doing if we create, a consultant on board. The issue coming before us that Robin's involved with might be the only particular issue that comes up in the next 5 years for a landscaping
That isn't.
architect.
No.
No,
No.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
You're
Well, the
finding
thing
out.
is, what if we have a civil engineer sitting here, and then we have a landscape architecture issue coming up? We're not dealing with someone all the time who has that expertise. Whereas in the planning department, you have the ability to present to, or should have the
But-
ability to present to us what we need to
I know, but remember, you're sitting in a quasi-judicial role. You're not a staff person making recommendations. No matter what expertise we have, you still have that authority to look at the
But
testimony and all that. So it's a little different.
Given
This
your
isn't-
information,
it
we
isn't-
discuss it.
It just helps. I mean, as I said, we're trying to resolve an issue because we're concerned that we won't be able to recruit people. And I know maybe, as the chairman pointed out, maybe we are digging a bigger hole for ourselves. I mean, this is, but this is the only way that Peggy and I could feel that could resolve this issue.
Does Robin? Can I ask Robin?
Yeah.
Robin, are you
Yeah.
finding conflicts
Yeah.
a lot?
Well,
Some.
there's enough that it would
It's gonna impact
there's enough
you?
that it impacts my business.
And we feel, having you on the board, at least I know I personally feel your expertise and things is needed sometimes and helpful, and therefore we like that. But how many votes would she can't just abstain in the vote because it's
That's
not
new.
that easy.
Yeah, see,
If it
that's
was
what
that
I thought.
Before we
easy,
thought it
we
was
wouldn't
that
be doing
easy,
it.
and it's not
That's what
that
I
easy.
thought when
now.
I got on the board. I thought
Yeah.
it was just
You know, when Robin does work, and she's got a project in now that I approve, it's not an issue because she's not the regular board. But if somebody were to appeal whatever that is, then that would put her in that same
Yeah.
And do you
position.
all understand that? Because
Yeah.
the way the statute reads, it's the board that she works under.
Yeah.
So when a decision goes to Tim, there's no issue unless it appeals to your board, then there's an issue.
right.
But if it comes before this board, then she has to file a termination letter with the client.
Yeah.
Neither she nor anyone in her firm, if she has a firm, can represent the client before the board. I mean, how would you like that?
Yeah.
Keith Pellin's
very
CEO, what it
confusing
did
for the
was,
client.
it said that he or his partners could do work up until the hearing, and then he could quit. Before that, you couldn't even do work up until the hearing.
I see.
If Keith were on this board and something came before his partners, he would have to either quit the board or do what Robin's going to have to do, which is a letter of termination, then filing a conflicts report, and not voting.
Right.
And
Can
then
she reapply then to the
she
board and
could
be back on-
rehired, but
Can she come back on the board the next day?
She wouldn't be off the board. She would terminate her relationship with her client.
no,
That
what
she
if
could-
she- what if she
get her
resigned?
client
No,
back.
the alternative.
She wouldn't be resigning from the board.
Well, but my point was, could she resign for that moment? She's off for a week. We put her back in the board after that appeal comes before us, and she's back on the board again. It's just a short-term termination.
Let me ask a question. Peggy,
So
no, Peggy, if she were to terminate her work, that's the work at that time and in the future, right? She can't just terminate her, or can she?
on that issue,
On that issue. But then after the meeting, can she then go into another?
she can have the client can rehire her. on
Rehire
another
her.
project.
So they, okay, so.
But for that project, her client is in here in front of
I
the
know.
board,
And they may-
unrepresented by the person
Unrepresented.
who's been helping them all along.
Right.
So you
That's
can
not-
see the problem with a small town.
No, it
Well,
won't
if
work.
she is terminated, why does she have to file a conflict? Because then at that point she has no more
It's a
conflict.
strange. Let me find exactly what the ethics provision told.
But
me.
Peggy, she wouldn't still be able to come before, could she yes, she can, can
In
she
the
represent
future.
her client?
in the future.
Okay, no,
In the-
what
not
I'm
on that-
asking.
For that issue.
If we get it on that issue, she can't vote, but she can participate, would she be able to participate for her? I mean, that's weird.
Not
Yeah,
if I-
Because
The
if
whole-
you
the whole thing
recuse
is
yourself,
weird.
basically they lose her. If
Right.
she can't vote, but she can still participate, meaning,
Right.
And then,
I
and
can't,
then
I didn't know that.
yeah, well, that's why I'm asking these questions to make sure I got it clear
You
too.
also have to think about the appearance of impropriety because
Right.
Oh, that's true.
Think about all the
Yeah.
volatile
I mean,
issues we've
that's
had
a-
in the past.
that whole thing's a loophole.
Yeah. But that's a good point. Just the appearances
Right.
tends to be,
Right. It's
and you got your professional reputation involved.
Right.
And
No,
I
But then
can-
another question is going to be, what happens if we don't do this? Or we're not going to do this if the council doesn't
well,
do this.
it's,
Robin's going to have to take the advice of the Ethics
Yes.
Commission, which I am now looking for.
yes. So,
yeah.
But basically, I think I remember what it was. I mean, it was kind of a peculiar thing, but under the work that Robin's done for the dog park, and let me know, you guys, if I'm not speaking right because I left my notes upstairs, but the dog park work that Robin did goes before Tim, so it doesn't go before you all. So there's no problem.
No, he
no,
promised
it's
to
coming.
take it.
It's
No, it is coming.
It's
He
coming
promised
here.
to take it to us.
It'll be coming here.
June 5, 4.
yeah.
Yeah, it's on the agenda.
Oh, okay, it was the other one. I'm sorry, the
The other
flip.
one.
Okay, no, the other one was the bakery.
Yes.
Yeah,
The bakery comes before Tim.
Yeah.
right.
And because it comes before Tim and it doesn't go to you all, she doesn't have to have a problem.
Yeah.
But the one that comes before you, which is the dog park,
Is that a problem in my
even though I argued strenuously with the Department of Ethics that because you're not getting paid and it's volunteer, it shouldn't fall under the rules, but they say it does.
If we don't do this, then we will be limiting, basically, boards and commissions will be limited to retired people. In other, with professional expertise, they would probably end up being people who are retired and no longer participating in the
or not doing business.
not doing
Not
business
doing
in the
work in the
city.
community.
Right.
Not doing work in the community.
That's basically, you're
Right.
correct.
So that's what we're really limited to now. If we
Yes.
And that's even after Keith Pellin's battle. And he fought a hard fight, and he won a lot. But it didn't go as far as this. And that was what we were posed to do before Keith moved to
Yes.
California. And then it just hasn't come up until then.
Well, basically, they're asking us to not have any qualified people on the board. I think.
That's
no retired people. No,
working.
qualified people are
Working.
retired,
working.
working,
You
currently
people are
working people.
qualified.
Well, I meant.
Yeah, I would say people who have
Yeah.
an interest, a business interest in the
Right.
community.
Right.
Yeah, and they'd be better qualified if we had a lot of other. There's some other people would bring more expertise to this board if we could, but I can see why they won't come on it, and I wouldn't either if I was because it's their livelihood.
Right. Oh no, we're limited anyway. No question about it.
It surprised me. I
Well-
was not expecting that at all.
Well, that's why the waiver is there for
Right.
that very reason. And if communities feel strongly enough about this, they can pass the ordinance to put that waiver into place.
Peggy,
If they
I don't like the waiver,
they
though.
don't.
Peggy, you talked to them. I'm getting
Several
bad at this
times.
too. We could expand the number of occupations, but I think that isn't what the intent.
No, they were okay with that.
No. What I'm saying, expand it to other
Bit
types
more.
that are not like real estate.
Well, we have that in our code
Well, what I'm
enforcement
saying,
board.
that opens up for more people that could be appointed, but it would to get around some of the question, like a council member's got to appoint a person.
Yeah.
They've got somebody they want to appoint. I'm just...
It's definitely more difficult with
Yeah.
the hand picking of each
How many
planning and zoning board
professions?
member.
How many professions are excluded? I mean, we've talked about engineers and architects and
Landscape,
planners and lawyers and.
Well, we didn't.
We
put
didn't
lawyers
stick
in the
lawyers
list.
on there.
We just put the four
Well,
that
you're
we
not
thought
you're
might be
not
applicable.
saying that we should have a lawyer on the board, but a lawyer sitting on the board, a practicing lawyer sitting on the board, could certainly have the same problem that Robin's having.
Absolutely.
Clearly.
And
We've had them
there's
before.
got to be a million more than that. Real estate professionals, developers, appraisers, all.
Well, let's look at it. I'm not currently licensed, but I used to be licensed in real estate in Connecticut, in Massachusetts. Would that qualify me for this if that was, so in other words, if the requirements were a little bit lower or less, we could always have somebody on the board
Broader.
who
That's what I was
Using
saying,
broader.
to
Yeah.
expand
to expand
the
it,
occupations.
right? Expand the occupation in a way
issue
that would
more.
allow us to designate somebody who, well, meets the spirit,
Yes.
if not, of the somebody with some expertise
What do you
in the
think?
arena.
Peggy?
That way, it wouldn't matter that much. It would be
We opened
easier.
the door a little with 4. Can we go?
Yeah. In other words,
I
if
see
you
your-
had somebody else on the board who
Yes.
met that qualification,
Correct.
that person could be designated so the
Yeah.
city council member could appoint a person of their
That's
choice.
correct.
Right.
That's all I'm saying.
No, I
Right.
Solve the March issue.
Expand the
So
category.
what you mean is perhaps
Water it down.
someone who's an urban planner, but they were an urban planner up in New York, and now
Right.
they've moved down here, but they are an urban planner.
And they
I
weren't
see
like
why
they,
that would
they
be.
don't have to be
know-
licensed
they
in the
know
state
our
of
laws in
Florida.
Florida.
They don't have to have a current license in the state of Florida. That's the issue, I think, more than anything else.
Well, I mean, if we say you have to have a realtor on there,
Yeah.
that person, again, you have to be licensed to be a realtor. You can't call yourself a realtor.
Or
but you can be licensed someplace else, not necessarily in Florida. I hold a real estate license,
well,
but
yeah.
not for Florida.
If you got a valid license, I think you could claim that you're right, but you can't be. I don't know if that's the intent of it. Is I know what
Probably
you're
not,
saying.
but
well, if the city council designates, if a person submits their qualification to city council, and city council designates that person, the city council is determining that person meets whatever the
Right.
the objectives were
Yeah.
of the ordinance requiring a person with certain expertise to be on the board.
Well, I'm just saying that normally a realtor, if you're not licensed in the state, they're not going to be coming before you.
That's right.
Right.
See, so to me, it's not meeting the intent. But I'm going to go with the attorney if she thinks if that's a.
See where I'm thinking.
I see where you're thinking.
Yeah.
Are we just, because we have a particular situation with Robin, are we looking to change everything now for the city? I mean,
What do you mean?
it
I'm
seems like
sorry.
we're painting with a broad brush.
Well, this is the second time we've had it come up
Yes.
in less than 2 years. So that was
Yeah.
why.
I can tell you, I've mentioned this to a couple of colleagues of mine, just not in Indian River County, just briefly. Now, I didn't tell them all the details, but I just told them, how this is a Florida statute, not just something with Indian River County or our city. They were amazed because there are a number of landscape architects in this state that are on boards. There are the Treasure Coast Regional Planning Council, members of planning boards all over the state. So
Yeah.
That's why the waivers.
it does
there.
affect your business.
Well, they may not have the waivers. I would say.
Keith was also stunned.
Yeah.
And went so
I don't
far
We
think-
had a
as
big
to-
company that did a lot of work for the city,
Right.
too.
And he ended up going all the way to Tallahassee
I
and
would.
before the board twice, the Commission on Ethics twice, to argue
That's
his
right.
case.
On a-
And won quite a wonderful ethics opinion to help. But it doesn't go as far as this.
Somehow we survived to this point in time. 18 years.
My question is, can the city council designate an individual by declaring that individual meets the requirements for membership on the board in accordance with what the city council believes those requirements would be?
Because that member would be, say, an urban planner,
Yeah.
perhaps retired, perhaps not working in the area, but an urban planner, serving on the board. I don't see why that would be a problem, because certainly the ethics opinions don't say that the person who gets this special designation has to take advantage of it.
Right.
It's put into place to help someone like Robin or Keith who are working members of the community.
I'm only raising this as an issue to protect the city from being able to
No, I think
comply
that's
with
it.
its own
Let me follow
ordinances.
that. Let me follow that, Don. So if we can go that route, can we go further and say if somebody has done an architect and retired, even though he doesn't have a license, because we don't get in that, we could say he's an architect. I mean, you're
Right.
basically, he doesn't take
I hate to say that, but I'd really like to run that by Chris Anderson.
Yeah,
and,
okay.
oh my goodness, that
But
opens
if
up
we
such
don't-
a
Licensed,
kettle of
current.
fish.
What,
Yeah.
what we want
Why
to
doesn't
do.
he
No,
have
I-
a
What we wanna
license?
do-
Where was
what-
he licensed? There's a lot in licensing.
Exactly.
I think the bottom line is
Yeah.
what we want to do is to have something in place to protect somebody like Robin,
Uh-huh.
so they can serve on a board and still be able to conduct business within the community.
Right.
Okay?
Right.
That's
We
it.
also don't want to hamstring the city to say we can't operate unless we have a person, sitting on the board. We probably have two other people on this board that could qualify, other than Robin, if the city council would just designate, and the city council designates that person.
Right, that person
Okay.
in that position.
Person in that position. So if Robin leaves for some reason and that city council member has somebody that doesn't qualify, you can look at the board and say, is there somebody else on the board currently that could be designated for that?
For any of the 4 positions that we put
Yeah.
into the ordinance. And
Right.
I wouldn't want to go too far afield from those 4 because Chris Anderson was, kind
I
of sort of,
understand.
yeah, I think that'll be
Yeah.
okay. We've never really had that come up before, but so I use that sort of as a segue into allowing us to have a little bit more leeway,
Right.
but I don't want to have lawyer, real estate agent, cook, chef, whatever.
No, I think what we currently have is fine, as long as you're not tied to currently licensed and practicing within the state of Florida.
But the fact is, if you don't have someone on the board like Robin, which we're trying to protect, you don't need this.
Well,
Well,
Right.
except
you may have somebody out there in the future that that we'd be missing that could
Well,
contribute to
and
that.
not
they
only
would have to
that, but
understand that
it
these
has
are the
to be
rules.
mandatory.
How about
Yeah.
you're taking away some political influence also from the 5
Yeah.
elected council members. If they were allowed their political appointments without qualification, and yet the 5 have to agree on the 2 alternates, how about making requirements on the 2 alternates that they could all agree on, putting this, urban planner, civil engineer, the expertise that you're looking for, making them a requirement for the alternates.
No, you
It
remember
has
it
to be-
has to
Has
be
to be
one of
voted.
Popular
Has to be-
members.
Yeah, that's the
Five
thing.
regular-
It's got to be the 5 regular.
That was in the waiver specified by the ethics.
Right, and that was
Why
exactly
not?
what.
Why not alternates?
That was what Tim and I asked originally. Was there any way that we could just do it so that, kind of like the Code Enforcement Board, where it's to the extent possible or to your best efforts, if you could possibly find somebody, and the ethics folks said, absolutely not. It has to be mandatory. It has to meet the absolute requirement of the waiver, and you just can't do it that way. And it has to be amongst the 5 people who are actually regular members of the board, because the alternates only step in every now and then.
But they have the ability to give the input.
How about a
And that
non-voting
was
ex officio
significant.
member?
Well, they have the ability to give the
I
input.
don't
but
think
they
that'll
can't-
work.
Yeah, that's what I'm referring to. Yeah, as
Yeah.
opposed to, the vote.
Let me understand. If Robin was absent one day, and I was out there and I had a case and it didn't go the way I wanted to, would I be able to say, well, this
No.
mandatory person
No.
wasn't here?
No. The mandatory makeup, not the mandatory attendance.
Right.
I mean, people are allowed to be ill or have something else going on in their lives.
And also, maybe,
Well, that makes sense, but the rest of this doesn't make any sense.
well, you could also, if you had
Welcome
more
to
than
the
one.
ethics rules.
Yeah.
Well, you can have,
Doesn't make any sense.
you can have if you had more than one person qualified, you could have a second person designated as the alternate for that particular purpose. So you could have 2 sitting members, one which would be the designated representative of that
Automatic
profession,
alternate?
and an automatic alternate if that person wasn't there or had to recuse and not fall. I mean, that's
There's
just
a little thought, an automatic alternate when there's a conflict.
Don't we have
No,
that already?
we don't
already
need
have
that.
that.
We don't
we
need
already
that.
have
Yeah, we're not worried about if that person.
well. All right,
yeah.
fine. If you're not worried about it, that's fine. But
Well, no, I'm worried about it from the standpoint you got to have somebody appointed who's the regular member.
Right.
But whether they're okay.
That's
Well,
the main problem.
If we need to do this in order to have Robin stay on the board, I'm in favor of moving this on to city council for this.
Well,
Yeah, let them decide.
Yeah.
we were hoping to get some.
we're giving you a lot of direction.
Well,
You know?
I guess one of the things
Well,
I wanted
it's
to
not
find
direction.
out,
You all have
Peggy
to-
said she was. Did you feel that the idea of maybe opening up a couple more
I-
occupations related to what you do? You know, like in land use and all that.
With land.
I think just clarifying, it doesn't have to be a currently,
what I'm saying is
a currently practicing person in that
I don't think
profession.
it has to be a currently practicing
No,
person.
no. I think we can.
If that's the case, then I think we're
Okay.
broad enough.
Okay.
Well, another option would be to expand the board to 7. We used to be 9. They knocked everybody down to 5, and that didn't come down. Moses didn't bring that to us. They could make this board 7.
That's true. They could make it 7, and that one position would have to be voted upon by the whole board.
Well,
Or
the
council,
other
I mean.
2. Yeah,
Two?
there'd have to be 2.
Well, that's true. Yeah, there'd be 2.
That
Yeah,
is definitely
I-
a city council decision.
Sorry, guys.
Yeah, I
don't
think
have
we.
enough seats up here.
No.
We'd have to change the whole.
We had 9.
Yeah, that
You can
was.
put 9 of these chairs up here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess.
You know,
no,
the
it's
city of
only 8 up
Jacksonville
here.
has 19 city council members.
Oh my God!
Yeah,
I
but
heard that
that's a
from
concern.
Dylan Reingold.
Isn't that,
who
That's a
doesn't
used
that
to-
cover
consolidated
population?
government. City.
I'd like to be in the
That's the
chair
whole-
business up
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
Taller ceiling.
Have you got any?
Are we looking for a vote, or
Well,
what draws us to a
what-
conclusion?
I mean, if
on
you're
this?
definitely against moving forward with this, we'd like to hear that as a vote.
Yeah, we would like a vote.
If you'd like to
either
recommend-
recommending
So what is-
it
is
or
there-
not to the city council.
Yeah.
So you're looking for us to make a statement, or do we? It's not a motion. We're asking to move this particular ordinance, this ordinance amending section 6504. You're asking us to either move this forward or to not recommend moving it forward? Is that what it's amount to?
Yes, we'd like to.
Or
think
make
that's
any
what Tim
changes.
asked.
Or make any changes to it.
Yeah, and if you want to add, like, we'd like to look into maybe doing some other. I hate to put it on Peggy's back, but
It's a draft, so we're
It's a
looking to
draft.
make it more favorable
Yes.
to bring it forward.
right.
Because I can't support this at this
Okay, well,
point in
that's
time.
what
I
that's
really
what we
can't.
want to hear.
And I
if you can.
apologize.
Yeah,
to
it's
Rob.
not
You're
right.
No,
a
I
valued
totally
member
understand.
here.
Okay.
No, I understand.
Honey thinks
Yeah.
it's spot zoning.
Well, that could work.
Thank you, Mark.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
But no, and I would like to move it forward for the purpose of protecting Robin and other future professionals on the board in these areas. But I would also like them to examine the possibility of maybe expanding the board to 7 to give them the flexibility to appoint who they want, and also. Well, it just gives us more flexibility.
I
Seven
can't
regular
support that.
members.
Bring it back with some
7
more
regular
suggestions
members.
to make it acceptable.
Yeah, I'm concerned about the wording where it says is either. In other words, it says either is an urban planner, landscape architect, civil engineer, architect, which implies that they're in the field and practicing. Is now a. So I would think that language might be changed to say either, who has qualified to be, or has
the
practiced,
experience
has the
of, or
experience,
has practiced
has
about
practiced as, or rather than is,
Or maybe has experience.
something along has
as-
experience.
Has
That
experience
is that to
Okay.
me would make it a lot easier.
Yeah.
Okay.
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 Yeah,
I think
like that.
I think so.
That's the change I would recommend.
Peggy. Yeah. No. Hey, anything to.
Could
That's
you
all I
repeat
would
that, Don?
Right now, in the second whereas clause of ordinance proposed 2014, it says one member is either an urban planner, landscape architect, civil engineer, or architect, would add the experts available, making it critical. So I would say a member who is qualified, or what was the language you had?
Has
now?
experience.
Has experience.
Who has experience?
As experience as.
Okay.
As
That
experience.
makes it broader, that's for sure.
Yeah, and that way, rather than implying it, they're working and licensed as such.
I just think you're going to have to qualify what experience is.
We have to qualify either too.
Well, now
Yeah,
we're trying.
working in a retail store for 50 years
experience.
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, now we're getting into licensing and all that,
Yeah,
and I
yeah.
thought we have arrived after
I think-
talking to Peggy that it's better to keep it this way. That we think. That's what I'm saying. That gives us that flexibility.
has
And let the
experience
city
has.
council make the determination when they
Sure.
that this person has that experience or has is qualified.
And they qualify, the city council would qualify that individual. When the
Yeah.
individual submits
Yeah.
their resume, then the city council will decide whether they have the adequate experience.
Or that individual council member who's appointing the slot.
Yes. Because
Well,
that's if it's the
That's the issue the city council has to
Right.
deal with,
Yeah.
whether they will accept that.
And generally, when that comes up is at election time, depending on how many council members are replaced, if they are replaced, that's when that comes up.
Right.
Yeah, because they have to
Yeah.
determine whether they want to
Right.
continue, who takes the responsibility for continuing all the badasses that are here.
Right.
You know?
So I'm looking at page 3 of the
Yeah,
of
go
the
ahead.
draft ordinance,
Yeah.
number 3 up at the top, and we're looking. What I hear you're saying is, the membership of the board shall include one regular board member who has experience as either an urban planner, landscape architect, civil engineer, or architect.
Yeah, I think that would do it.
Does that?
I'm still fuzzy as to what occupations could conceivably get in trouble here. Obviously, attorneys can. Do computer consultants, do
Well, remember, we can always change
realtors or
the ordinance.
developers or
You mean
or
under
whatever.
the ethics rule?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure, yeah.
It sounds to me like anyone with a financial interest in something that gets
Anyone
brought.
who's-
Yeah, but they're not
working
going
in
to
the
come back
community.
before remember, this is, and we're talking about putting somebody on the board on the regulatory. So you're talking about the professions that normally show up here to be, that are regulated. Rarely does a computer, maybe once you have something that would come up on the board.
You
but
know, I have an ancillary question here. What about we have the duties now of the Board of Adjustment. Where does that legally work in there?
Same.
What's that?
Same thing.
We are the
Same
Board of
thing.
Adjustment.
Yeah, it's one of the,
It's not, okay.
no, it's the same. Because
just
it's a
another-
regulatory board
It's
making
another
a-
regulatory
Yeah.
duty that you all have
Yeah.
taken on.
So it
Okay.
covers that,
All right.
okay?
We've really had very few of those since you all have had
Yeah,
that duty.
we haven't.
done it.
Right. So when they do come up, they're big matters.
Because I tell them, these people are tough. You don't want to waste your money and time.
Well, with I would make the motion that we move this on to the city council recommendation with the change that we
Okay.
recommended.
That being the only
The
change?
only change that I think is
Okay.
needed at this time. City council will come up with their own issues
Okay.
in terms of who appoints. But
Do I have a second
We
on that
don't-
motion? I'm sorry. I interrupted you, I apologize.
I'll wait for a second because I have a comment then.
Do I have a second on that motion? No second? It dies for a lack of second.
No comment.
Peggy, how would you plan to approach the council with this for their discussion?
I think the same way we've approached it here. Just try to explain to them what the ethics rules are, what the ramifications are, your discussion, they'll have your minutes, and see what they think.
And remember, we go do a first reading with them, so it's not like we're in hearing.
Well, the
So if
first
they don't
reading,
want to go
public
forward,
They
or
got
they
two
wanna-
readings on this?
Yeah,
Yes.
I'm not sure
Not
that
here, but there will be.
expanding the board to 7 would do anything except relieve the restrictions to make a political appointment. For an individual council member to make
agree.
their political appointment.
And that's a whole nother discussion they would have to have.
I would like to make a motion then that we table this and go no further with it. That's my opinion. I don't think I can support the whole concept of it. I think that I'm digging a hole and I'm just making it deeper. And I don't know the answer. I think there's another answer out there in the world, and I think Dawn might have had some impact on what have you. And I know what the problem is, but I don't think this is the right way to approach the answer. That's my opinion.
Unfortunately, this is the waiver that the legislature has, so.
Yeah,
I
I was going to
understand
say,
that also.
That's all we have.
what choice, do we have the choice of not enacting this and, let's say in the worst case, throwing Robin off the board and not appointing, not having another member of the board that's in this situation? Is that the alternative to not doing something along these lines?
Well, that would certainly be the professional's choice of whether or not it
Yeah.
impacts their business
right.
in the community financially
Yeah.
to the point, and to their partners, which is what Keith had a real problem with,
Mm-hmm.
as to whether they can afford to stay on the board.
Period.
Right. It's not that I would be kicked off.
No, no way.
It would be that it would be a decision.
Your decision.
Well, you
whether
wouldn't-
stay
no,
on the board.
I didn't mean.
Well,
kick
Robin,
down.
if we
Yeah.
don't move this forward, would you have a predilection of staying on the board or not?
Right.
What would,
Oh, yeah.
Would I?
would you stay on the board?
No.
Yeah, okay. I believe
That would be
you know,
your choice.
That'd be my choice.
That'd be your choice. We're
Yeah,
not kicking
it makes
anybody
no sense
off.
to
That'd be
me.
your choice.
Makes
You
no
basically say, I cannot do
misspoke
business.
when I said kicked
Yeah,
off.
no, I
You're
understand.
having that many conflicts. That's sad.
Well, it doesn't mean
I
more-
hope I will have more.
I know.
That's that's the nature of
Very
my
popular business.
It limits her
right now.
business. It limits her business.
It's very limiting. And the other thing is, it brings my name up in conversations like this, public hearings, and I really would prefer not to have my name tossed around like that.
Right.
In any other way than is something reputable, and so there's no. I don't want someone to come to me and want to use, hire me as a consultant, and then find out later, oh my, now I'm going to have some kind of conflict with her.
And you have approached this extremely ethically. I mean, my hat's off to you. This has been a hard endeavor, and we've worked hard with you over the last few months, and you understand the issues and you understand where you are. And some may not have gone that far before.
Oh, thank you. It's been an interesting ride.
Well, I mean, I'm still in favor of moving us along if we make the amendment that I had suggested, which nobody else supported.
I think we have
Could I
a
have-
motion on the board, on
I have
the
a
floor.
question.
Yeah,
If we
discussing it.
table this proposal, then we're ultimately leaving future action up to being challenged. Is that the question?
No.
Challenged by, if we go through the steps that you've gone through to this point, recusing one's participation and filing the necessary paper, then how does this staying in limbo affect our going forward? How does this tabling the issue affect us going forward, except by a challenge in the future by the ethics committee or something?
No, it would be Robin would have to follow the ethics advice that we
Right.
got from Chris
Right.
Anderson, which would require her to terminate her work relationship with the client and then perhaps have the client rehire her after the matter came before her board.
Right.
Okay, so that issue now is a public record, is what you're saying. That opinion from the ethics board is now a matter of record.
Oh yeah.
Oh, sure.
That
And that's
we
what,
now- that
and
we
the
now
city
have-
attorney is giving her that, so,
that
you
we
know.
now have, we're
Right.
required to
Yeah.
address.
why we got to do this?
Right.
I have worked with
So-
the Code of Ethics on that opinion.
If then we are required to address it, then it seems to me that, like it or not, we should send some recommendation forward.
I don't know what it is, though.
Yeah, and if we table it, would that prohibit you from moving it forward to the city council? I don't think so, would it?
No, it wouldn't. But to be honest with you, Peggy and I have talked about it. We probably wouldn't do it.
Yeah.
Okay, because you're bringing up some of the issues that are coming up, and I would. The point is, if you're and the chairman says we're digging a hole. Well, if three of you think we're digging a hole, doing further look into this is not worth it. If you think there's we can come up with some other options and look
Or
into
unless,
it.
unless the city council read these
Yeah.
minutes and one of the council members directed
Exactly.
me to move forward with it at the
Does
council
Right.
level.
Does Robin get to vote on this?
That's a good question. I thought about it. I actually did that analysis, and I would say yes, it's too extenuated. It's whether or not to recommend a legislative ordinance to the city council on something that might at some future point inure to her financial benefit or gain or loss is to me too extenuated. So yes, I think she could vote.
Well, maybe we ought to do an up or down on the tabling, but I would hope that we maybe move it on with just encouraging them to have a discussion, see if they can come up with a better idea than we could.
But let me go back, if I may. Number one, we had a motion and it failed for a second.
Right.
Correct? That motion is now off the table. Now, I'm saying I think we should table the
Tammy, we
motion
need to open a public
and let
hearing.
the experts come up with a better solution than what we have.
A motion to table
Mr.
is
Chair, we
non-debatable,
need to
by the
open
way.
a public hearing as well.
Motion
For
to table.
public hearing? Forgive me. Ma'am, do you have any comment from the public?
That's coming.
It's coming up, yeah.
Can I make another comment?
Yes, sure.
One of the things I think in our discussion that I think would be good for the city council to hear is the benefit of having someone with that kind of expertise on the board.
Right.
I mean, we haven't. I mean, I'm a landscape architect, and it's oftentimes my profession is terribly misunderstood. It's the scope of work that we do and services we offer, but I think that needs to be part of the record too. Is for an architect, a civil engineer, anyone who does land development from the beginning on, site planning, that so forth.
Well, we try to make that as a very positive, but you're right. We should.
Yeah.
I
don't think people know.
I think I can recommend that Tim take this to City Council and ask them for their opinion. As opposed to a motion, I can make a motion or ask for a motion to be made that would say to you, hey, you need to bring it before them and ask them the question if that's what you're looking for from us. I'm not saying we don't need to discuss it. I'm saying I don't think this is the solution.
Okay.
Where we're at.
But
And I don't know if I have agreement on that, though, Tim.
Yeah.
I don't know.
in other words, let the council know that the planning and zoning addressed this matter, and we did not see fit to advance it. And if you wanted to bring that for their discussion,
Well said.
We didn't have a good solution.
Yeah.
Well,
We don't know
there's
if
another.
these words are
there's a
the-
contrary argument you could make against the total concept of having somebody designated with this expertise, saying that this expertise would be expected to come from the professional planning department that the city has already hired, and that a person designated as an expert in this arena on the board would have undue influence on the rest of the board, and therefore it's an inappropriate way to go about conducting business.
I don't.
That's an argument.
That's
I'm
an
not saying it's my argument. I'm just saying it's an argument.
Or is there it's a wild thought, but is there any possibility she could be on the board as a non-voting member and just give us her expertise? Is that possible? But she acted like an alternate almost because we can hear her input, but you want to
No,
vote on it, right?
it's not set up that way in the code.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean,
Okay.
she could come before your board
ex-officio, not
as a citizen giving input.
That's true, too.
has the planning department ever had a citizens advisory committee that would sit upstairs with you and go over these various things so that by the time it comes here,
That's what we.
Look,
we have
if
your information?
I don't even have enough staff now to handle half these boards I get. Okay, I mean, I love citizen input. That's why we have neighborhood meetings.
well,
but
that's where I addressed my original comment was
Yeah.
that council has that responsibility.
All right. Where do we stand?
Budgetarily.
I mean, I'm getting the fit. We need to take. Go ahead.
It'd probably be
Tammy.
a sunshine board.
There was a motion made to table this and go no further with it, but the motion was not seconded.
Yes.
That's why we're
Made
still
by
able
the
to
chairman.
discuss
Okay.
it.
Is there a second to my tabling motion? No, I do not see when it dies.
Okay.
Can I just mention one more thing along the lines of what Robin was saying? And it's in the CEO 04-1, which is the one I've used in crafting this ordinance. And it said that, and this is kind of the thinking behind the waiver. The law or ordinance has worked a waiver of conflict, the one that we're contemplating, by recognizing that certain credentials are so vital to the expertise and operation of a public board that the otherwise conflicting business-client connections of certain members must yield to the public purpose of a portion of the board's membership possessing such professional training and practice. So that's the thinking behind the waiver to the ethics rule. And that's what we're facing right now. And it's kind of a clash between something that I learned in my certification exam last year, the thought that one cannot serve two masters, but a public office is a public trust. And what we're doing is we're trusting enough the individual who has those credentials that we want to make it possible to keep someone like that on the board. And that's the clash.
I have a question. How does the Architectural Review Committee or Commission or Board work? Is it active? And could it be incorporated within the P&Z, either as a subcommittee to perhaps satisfy the qualification that we're conflicted with, and at the same time deliver their consultation to the P&Z?
Didn't we have something last year where we asked the Architectural Review Board to look at this issue. And then bring
the
us-
Architecture Review Board, are not really very active, and the only because they have not developed guidelines and design criteria. The only thing that they have authority now is to look at overlay district. That's the only regulatory in the Cardinal Ocean Drive area. And we've not had a project yet of that level for their review. So that's where they stand right now. But I don't believe that's going to work. It's getting back to a... Yeah.
My thought is that
Yeah.
you're trying to amend the code or ordinance. Perhaps that committee ought to be abandoned and joined within the P&Z and the code for the P&Z expanded to include that.
Well, I don't see the whole idea with this is to protect professionals and get them on, not necessarily to bring an architect on or that. I don't know what that would help us. I mean, that would not solve the issue we have here
We haven't done this for any of the other boards or commissions yet.
because we
Yeah.
don't have.
Well, the Historical Preservation Board and the Architectural Review all have requirements that there be certain professions on.
Have we
Yes.
done a waiver? Have we put the waiver provision in for any of those yet?
Well, they would automatically
They automatically
have
Automatically
that.
have
What
it.
we're doing, what this
Okay.
ordinance does is it puts in place the same thing that those two groups have.
Okay,
Right.
so they already have it.
Right.
And
The only difference, of course, is that they're not selected by each council member.
there's the difference.
That's where
That's the rub.
That's the rub.
Peggy, I want to understand if we were to move this forward or not, and the council passed it the way it reads, then what would Robin's position be on one of these jobs? She would just declare the financial conflict, and there wouldn't be an
file-
ethical
and
issue
file
at
it-
all,
no.
but they'd still have
The
the
waiver
financial
would
conflict.
completely do away with the ethical issue.
Everything would be the same, except I wouldn't have, the way I understand it, I wouldn't have to terminate.
Yes.
Nor would your partners.
One solution would be to have this board appointed at large totally, and then remove the individual board making nominations for this board because it contains a professional expertise requirement. Therefore, it should be at large for the. Well, you're doing it for other boards and
No,
commissions.
I
Like
know
it-
that,
like
but
it was
there were
before.
at least two
That's
boards.
political.
There were.
I know it's
what?
political, but
there's-
it's not ours. It's the board.
There's
I mean,
three
it's a
that have
suggestion
that.
for the city council to
Right.
consider. That's
Might be
all.
better for the city.
You're saying, you're saying remove the political component.
Yes. Yes.
That's
God
hard to do,
forbid.
isn't it?
Good luck.
I know it's hard to do because that's been done.
It just started. The political appointment just started.
I understand. And so we're already seeing it has
It's only,
it has
what, 2 years old?
ramifications.
2 years. And an
years old?
additional board just went that way.
Utilities.
Utilities.
Went to
So it's
individual
always been
appointments.
large?
Utilities, finance, and planning and zoning are all individual appointments, except for the at-large appointments of the alternates.
Right now, I think we've been around this tree a number of times.
Yeah.
We're sitting here, we're not moving forward or backwards. I'm trying to find some way to get us out of it and just say stop.
Let's just
overdone
move it forward to the council and say that we couldn't come.
You can just give them a report.
We have no strong feeling one way or the other.
The board feels that's an acceptable statement? Does that be any other form?
You could move it forward with no recommendation.
No recommendation.
To city
Yes.
We
council.
move it forward with no recommendation.
I would do that.
We have a motion on that?
So move.
Do we have a second? Do we have a second?
Yes, for God's sake.
Okay, we have a
Move
motion
it
and a
forward
second.
with no
Right,
recommendation.
we have a second now.
Yeah.
All in favor of that, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
I, nay, me.
So you don't want to move it forward with no recommendation?
I much prefer that Tim gives a report. I don't want this ordinance going to them.
Well, they're going to have our
I-
minutes
He
of
will
our
give a
You
meeting.
didn't second
report
my
and-
table either.
He will give a report and the minutes.
That's right.
Yeah.
The minutes will give our discussion.
Okay. I think we're complete then? All right. 4-1, I think it was.
Okay.
And that didn't help my table either, and you could have been,
Well, it's better than tabling, I'll tell you that.
okay.
Peggy, you going to leave?
Planning Department matters. Tim, I think that's where we are now.
Right. I got a couple things to go over with you. The first thing is I'm going to ask the Historic Preservation Commission to support some changes in we have a tax abatement provisions in our historic preservation ordinance, and basically it allows historic structures have been designated locally for protection. It makes them eligible for tax abatement. But we're not going anywhere with this. We have very few. I'm looking at our historic neighborhoods, and this kind of dovetails in original town. I think we should, and that was my idea when we did this, to try to make that a carrot, but it's not really helping us to get some improvements in these neighborhoods. We're going to suggest to them that we open it up and make it eligible or make it available for all properties that may be eligible for the National Historic Register or the local register, which is a list of properties. And of course, if you're aware of the ordinance, if they do it, the state reviews it and all that, and they have generally have a 10-year conservation easement on it to keep it that way. So I think this is just a tool we can use for an incentive. So I'm going to ask them, that ordinance would come before you at a later date anyway, but I wanted you to be aware of that. We're looking at that, and all right? The other thing is, in February of next year, we're required to notify the state about whether we're going to move forward with an update to our comprehensive plan. And among the staff, we've talked about this thing. We've got to update this thing. I don't think I can, as a professional, tell the state that we don't need to update our plan. So, I mean, it's pretty bad. So what we're going to do is we have a year after we tell them that, or probably more than that. I think we can get extensions. That we will we're going to start work on some aspects of it, and we're just going to do the best we can to have it done. But we won't really concentrate more on it till next year. So I want to work on projects that we talked about this year and do the best we can on that. And one of the major areas we've talked about is not only finishing at least the original town neighborhood one, but to move forward on. I'm doing some we're doing changes in the zoning ordinance right now, working with the staff, and we'll be coming before you at a workshop to discuss those and get some direction on that, as well as want to do the wetlands and the buffers along the lagoon. Those are kind of the main areas I want to work on to get done, but I feel we need to get this done. And it's just one of those things. Hopefully, I'd like to see if I can get another staff member, but, it's been tough.
Tim, so the priority list we have for this year, we'll keep our priority
Generally
list for this year.
Yes.
But in the next year, it's comprehensive plan review?
Yes.
And that will be a priority, or that most of what, we have to have our normal day-to-day things?
No. The priority is we're going to do development reviews, the priority. Okay. When somebody comes with an application, I am not denying them that. So it may be some of the more aspects that are more, shall we say, benefit or added bonus or something, things that we have to do, that we would, things that come up. Oh, it'd be nice to change the ordinance to do that. Well, unless I'm ordered to do it, we probably would kind of let those go. But the things that we need to work on, and the code has been a problem. And now that I'm going through bit by bit, it really needs to be cleaned up. But I think we can do that, and that'll be certainly a benefit to all of us. All right.
Questions?
Nope.
Okay.
Right.
Tim, does that take a majority of an individual's time just to do that one function?
Which function?
Upgrading the comprehensive plan. That's full on one person.
I'm going to have
full-time?
all three of our planners are going to be working on that. I've got to spread it out.
Okay, I don't know how much it entails.
Oh yeah,
is it starting over? You don't actually?
We are going to start over and just get rid of what we got in there. That's the simplest thing to do, and just come up with new. My biggest concern is making sure that the policies and objectives. That is to me the most
vision
important
plans,
part.
et cetera, are incorporated into.
Yes, they'll all be in there, but that is the most important part of it, that we have policies that mean something. I mean, there are good and bad things about our current plan. The bad thing, it's terrible and really doesn't give you any direction. The good thing is we can do a lot of things without having to worry about it because they don't address it. And I don't think that's the intent of what the comp plan should have been done. So we'll do that. We'll work with you and keep you up to date on that. And I say this because work is picking up in my office. I can tell there's a lot of marginal pieces of property people are wanting to do things with, and so it's good. It's just that I'm not exactly, the staffing is not. I'd like to have at least one more administrator up front desk so I can take Gail, who's a planner, and put her full-time planning rather than handling administrative duties. So,
Have you got a
but
budget
we'll see.
request in for that?
Well, I'm waiting to the manager. We're dealing with the manager's budget.
Should we, as a board, take a
No,
position?
don't do anything.
Okay.
Don't get me into trouble here.
Okay. If we can help.
All right.
Tim?
We'll have to see how it goes.
So, so you said February next year you've got to notify.
Yeah,
the
we
state
have to
that we're going
formally
be doing
notify the
this.
state that we're going to go ahead. Now, what happens if we don't notify? Well, we can't do any comp plan amendments. And really, would have been the trouble. We had that problem when I first got here. You couldn't do. We had annexations, and we couldn't even bring them in under our code because we couldn't amend the comp plan. So, I mean, that's been the only real problem we've had. Now, the state has gotten rid of a lot of the penalties they used to have, but you never know. The governor's office changes. We might be doing other things. I mean, so I never.
Is there anything pending that might be impactful here?
No, I don't think anything to be that would do that. Okay.
Good question.
All right. Any other questions you may
No.
have? Okay.
So,
All right.
There's a woman sitting in the audience.
Well, I think she wants to do the
we gotta
workshop.
We get the
Workshop? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I have what I hope is a quick item under board members' matters. Are we ready for that?
Yes.
I was pleased to hear that we're going to see the site plan on the dog park, because I live near there. I drive by there 10 times a day, and I always see unleashed dogs up by the street. I also see vehicles way beyond the no motor vehicle signs. And so we would either, until they get that fence up there, we may need some attention to enforcement of those kind of things. I guess the way it reads today, in the interim period, you can have unleashed dogs right by the street. As a matter of fact, I saw a couple looking for their unleashed dog on the sidewalk. And it's just not a good situation the way it is today. When they get it fenced and everything, it may be fine. But
Well, since it's going to be quasi-judicial, let's not go too far and let's give an opportunity. But you're right. Those are issues.
Right.
I had one other board member matter to bring up. This board asked me to participate in the Public School Planning Citizens Oversight Committee. Well, I attended my first meeting there, and after a lot of consideration, I was made chairman of that committee. That's a true story. If I'm lying, I'm dying. The minutes will prove me to be true. There was 4 people were nominated before me of a 5-person board, 6-person board. And after they all declined, they said, Lawfer, you made it. So I said, okay. And I couldn't even get it out. So that's how I became that chair. In reality, there wasn't much. The first meeting we had a while back, we talked a lot more about the schools because it was Beachland, and therefore I was in the middle of the fracas and the fray there that was going on. But since that subsided, all the schools and the planning and the changes within the county were not within the city of Vero Beach. So therefore, I had very little to say. And we talked about the buildings and the way that they're turning buildings more green and some of the things that they're planning and doing. And a lot of these are very positive. And I can report back to you to saying that our county and the school board are working together in some areas and positively, and that there's a lot of green being done and a lot of improvements to how we'll affect our environment here in this county. And I think they deserve credit for that. It may be costly in some places, but I think it's well worth the savings that will accrue to them over a period of time. And I experienced that. And so I would like to comment. I think there's some positive things going. And a lot of times I'm not necessarily as positive, but I think I was on this board meeting from what I heard. So thank you. If anybody has any questions.
That's a good point. I'm glad you brought that up. We've got Rosewood. Is it Rosewood Elementary?
Yeah.
We're not going to bring it to you, so don't worry about it.
Okay.
We're going to just review it staff-wise, send it off to the technical committee. We're not going to go through what we did in Beachland. I talked to Stan Bowling, and there's no way we're going through that. Basically, they had the same problem that Beachland did, and it's a better situation though.
we picked up our grandchildren at that school for years.
they have a much worse problem than Beachland did. But I wanted to ask the chairman, is this greening that they're doing, is that going to partially offset the paving of Beachland?
No, this is not in particular onto Beachland Elementary. I was talking about new schools and new changes.
I'm talking, would it bring us back to where we were maybe in terms of
I
green
have
space or-
no idea of that. Most of what they're talking about is the type of cooling systems that we're going to have, the type of plantings, the directions of the buildings, the shading they're planning. They're using a lot more insight and more conscious of how they build and set up the school
Oh,
systems.
you're talking green in terms of energy efficiency.
Conservation,
Oh, okay.
and as far as inside what products they're putting in the schools now, and all those things. So it's a total package, not just one item, not outside necessarily trees.
Renovation?
And a lot of it in the renovations also. And some of the, they talked about a lot of places where we have these temporary buildings outside, the cost of those and the cost of being in the new buildings, what they'll be like. And some places are actually putting plantings on the roofs and things.
Good.
So it'll
Yeah.
be, it's
good.
going to help.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
I have one item. I represent the board on the High Speed Rail Commission, and the City Council last week extended the High Speed Rail Commission until December. So it was supposed to sunset in the first week in June, and it's now been extended to December because the work ain't done, I guess. Well, the environmental impact statement has not yet been issued by the Federal Rail Administration, and we're trying to wait for that before everybody responds to it.
Do you have an expected date for that?
They keep extending it. They said it was going to be out in April. Then they said it was going to be out in May. Now they're saying it's going to be out in June. I have no idea when it's coming out. They did extend the response period. At the request of the All Aboard Florida, the original was for a 45-day response to the EIS. It's now been extended to 75 days at the request of All Aboard Florida. And they have added 2 presentation dates. One will be in Indian River County, and I assume it will be in Vero Beach for a presentation when the EIS is issued, and we will not know that date until the EIS comes out, and there's going to be a total of eight hearings.
That there's been a lot of misunderstanding in the community regarding this public presentation. They were calling it public meeting, public comment time, and when in fact, if public has anything, they can write it on a card and put it in a Dropbox.
The way in which the presentations are going to be conducted, as described by Representative from All Aboard Florida, is that there are not going to be any hearings. There are not going to be anybody standing up making any talks. They're going to set up in some sort of a facility a bunch of a presentation of the facts about the All Aboard Florida project and what the EIS says and what have you. And people can go and spend. It's going to be a 3 or 4 hour period where people can come and look at these presentations and then offer written comments to the Federal Railroad Administration about their concerns, and the Federal Railroad Administration will then basically compile all those comments and determine whether or not they're significant or not.
Don, so what you're saying, the bottom line is there are going to be no questions asked and
That's
answered
correct.
at this
That is correct.
meeting.
I was quite concerned about that when they made that presentation. Look at the minutes of the meeting and see that I get a little upset. Because there's not going to be an opportunity for anybody to really comment at the time. It's all going to be written comments, and it's going to be handled in a way that really is going to a workshop, a public presentation and stuff, so you can go and ask questions of the individual making the factual presentation, but you can't raise objections, raise concerns, or anything else at that point. Only it's going to be there to give out information about what the All Aboard Florida project is and what the environmental impact says, how it will impact your community.
So it would be more of a charrette than a public hearing.
Yeah, it's a presentation, basically. And it's not going to be somebody standing up making a presentation. It's going to be a series of tables with information presented, and you're going to have to go figure it out yourself, the way it appears to me. I was not happy with that, but
That's the way it is.
it's the way it is.
Is there any further business or any more board member matters that have to come today? Any other comments? Then I'm looking for an adjournment. We're adjourned. Now I will open up for a public, workshop discussion of the white paper. Tim, do you want to let our person speak first? How would you?
It's up to her. She's been waiting.
Yeah, that's what Wake her up.
So if I go first, do I get a rebuttal after?
No matter what, we'll give you a
what,
rebuttal.
you-
Yes,
you-
feel free to speak to us.
You can speak last if you'd like. Yeah.
And she doesn't have to be, there's no swearing in for this one at all, so it's just a workshop. Okay, good. If you'd like to come up to the podium so we can hear you. Please give us your name and where you live at, please.
Or you can sit down.
Or you can sit down.
Sit right there, yeah,
Turn
more
the-
comfortable.
Hit the
I talk pretty loud.
well, no, they need you. There you go.
Does it have to be close, like that close?
That's
Yeah,
fine.
that's
Perfect.
good.
You're good.
Well, I don't know if anybody came into your office, Tim, to talk
No,
about.
they didn't.
So they didn't. Okay,
No.
so it's like there hasn't been anything since I got.
Name and address, please.
Yeah,
Oh, Billy Wagner, 2225 20th Avenue. We were talking about people recusing themselves because they have a professional interest or a monetary interest or something in something they're going to vote on. So when you were revising this, you said on page 6, point 11.5, it said at the neighborhood meeting held March 20th to discuss the draft, it was clear that some property owners were concerned that a wholesale prohibition on expansion of conditional uses was burdensome. So I only heard one person say that, and that person was on the Planning and Zoning Board themselves. So I thought somebody like that should be in the audience as a resident. Well, I don't think they were a resident. How does that work? How can they be in the planning zone board? But I mean, they should be a private citizen commenting because they're a property owner in the town, in the area we're talking about. There's no conflict. To me, it's a conflict.
Well, no, for one thing, these are legislative items. So, and being a board member, they can voice their opinion, whether they have a financial interest or not. So that's not out of.
Let me give you an example I may have. Do you think you should be able to vote when they talk about real estate taxes going up? But you're a real estate tax. You pay real estate taxes, so that means you shouldn't be able to vote? See, I think I'm in the position where I have the same interest you have, and I have the same right to express my opinions also. Plus, it's only a workshop.
Right, but you to express your opinions as a private citizen, not on the Planning and Zoning Commission.
I think I was placed here to have my opinion heard.
Well, and it
That's
was
one
a
of
workshop.
their duties is to provide advice on that. So clearly, within.
It was simply a workshop, and
Yeah.
just because we sit up here doesn't
Right.
mean we give up our human rights, if you will, or any other rights. Even you.
But when it comes to a vote, you see what I mean?
But there was no vote.
If this is not ever going to be voted on.
No.
Oh, well, no. Well,
Okay.
eventually, no.
Just
That part
rewritten.
won't be voted on,
Right.
but the objectives, the part that's just the background, right?
Yeah,
It's reading
I
the
know
white
that's the
paper.
background, but you said that some property owners were concerned. How many? I only remember
Well,
one.
you don't. I mean,
That's a little.
that gets
It's
back.
a little loose. That's
Well,
what I'm saying. To change,
it isn't a
you
foot-
changed 11.5 entirely and completely because of that one line.
Because I have to look at, as I said, one, this is a draft.
Right.
And two, I have to look at how to get something through that's fair and equitable to everybody, including the property owners and people that didn't show up, to make it work, as well as try to, to meet the guidelines of that. So I'd suggested another approach. And one of the things that came up, it was real clear, community church might want to take out a dilapidated multifamily house. I'm not so certain the neighborhood would be against that, because I've already talked to a few. And the way we had written that would prevent them from going through that. So that's why there were some changes done to allow more flexibility to do that with the same intent. But there were 2 or 3 representatives, and I was going to talk about that. We came up with a